Hello friends and followers, welcome back to TJ's Modeling Bench. I've spent a lot of time this week working on the Phantom. A lot of that time has been spent trying to eliminate seam lines where the pieces come together. I've had a lot of ghosting issues, so I've spent considerable amount of time getting rid of those, and we're on our way into paint. So let me show you what we've got done so far this week and a few other goodies I've picked up along the way. I'm getting real close to laying paint down on my aircraft, and I needed to prep my canopies, windshield canopies, this center, I don't know, whatever, separator between the front and rear seats. And I have these canopy masks that were part of the original purchase 21 years ago, and not surprisingly, the adhesive on them isn't as good as it once was. So, and I also found that some of these, which are meant for this kit, don't quite fit exactly to the shape, especially like in this divider piece. You've got these small side windows on it, and if you see, these are actually two different sizes, and I believe that's because every window on this thing has a seal around it, so it allows you to lay down the smaller of the two, which will leave an opening so that you can spray that seal, and then you lay down the larger one to cover the seal and the window, and then spray your final color. But neither one of those actually fit the molded in shape of the window. So with that, and the fact that the adhesive isn't really working anymore, and in fact it even came with adhesive masks for the wheels and tires. So because of that, I'm going to end up having to do this my own. So I've got my Tamiya tape assortment here. I've got a couple of cutting mats from Infini, I guess. So I can do narrow strips, and what I'll do is we'll do the windshield surround with the Tamiya tape, and then we'll go back in and fill in whatever needs to be covered still with this liquid masking fluid from AK. I like this stuff. It works really good. It's basically just liquid latex rubber, but it works very well for doing this kind of thing. So you don't have to use masking tape to cover the entire canopy. You just basically cover your outline and then fill in with the masking fluid, and that works just fine. But it's time consuming to have to do it this way. And you know, the windshield itself is 3 separate windows that need to be masked off. And I need to research quickly before I get started. I'm not positive if that center windscreen is tinted with the bluish blue-green tinted windows that a lot of the earlier models had. I have a feeling the E model is not, but I'm going to have to look that up to be sure. And then, of course, this divider between front and rear cockpit. You know, you've got the 2 small side windows there. And trying to mask and paint that weather seal, yeah, that's going to be real fun. So anyway, that's where I'm at with working on these canopies before we start laying down paint on the entire aircraft. I was starting to work on the munitions for the aircraft. We've got our drop fuel tanks, an assortment of those. You can pick and choose which ones you're going to use, or I believe between this one and this one, these two are identical, but the two in my left hand are slightly different versions. These would be out on your wings. These two are each centerline tanks, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, we had those, and then I started pulling the other munitions and wing, the racks off of the sprues. I'm looking at them, and they're not bad. They're okay, but I wasn't real excited with all of these. So I did a thing, and I ended up ordering some res kit 3D printed munitions and stores for this aircraft. What I ended up purchasing were inboard and outboard pylons, an AN ALQ 119 electronic countermeasures pod. These in the back, what is this one? This is the AIM 65 Maverick. We have an AIM 7E Sparrow, an AIM 9 Sidewinder, and some Mark 82 bombs. And just quickly, here's a comparison of the the inboard pylon from res kit versus the one that's in the kit. And really, there's not a comparison. Obviously, the kit part lacks some fastener detail. The shape looks correct, relatively correct, but the detail on this res kit is just outstanding. You can see there are basically fairings, winglets almost, that do not exist on the kit part, but the accuracy of these res kit parts to the actual racks is just impeccable. And even underneath where the weapon would attach to the pylon, you actually have some of the internal connecting points in there. I mean, this is just outstanding detail. So yeah, I'm happy with this purchase. I mean, it's not cheap for this stuff, but you get what you pay for, right? I did end up painting the center panel of the pilot's windscreen. It's a mixture of clear blue and clear green, the Tamiya brands. Green just seemed too green and blue seemed too blue, and mixing the two actually gave me the color I was hoping for. And then, of course, masked it with the Tamiya tape after everything was dry. This is the pilot's canopy. And you can see I outlined where the framework is. So there's very little on this front edge. And then filled everything in with the liquid mask. Same thing on the Wizzo's canopy, backseater. Same thing. Now, this center divider piece, the two trapezoidal windows on the sides, there wasn't enough of a relief in the mold where I could put the tape over it and follow any line with the knife and cut it that way. So what I've done, and what I'm hoping works, is I've outlined it with thin pieces of the Tamiya tape and then covered the glass with the liquid masking. And once that's dry, I'm hoping to go in with my number 11 blade and then cut away where the liquid mask is covering the masking tape, and remove the masking tape and leave the liquid mask on that trapezoidal window. So you can see it from the inside, the shape. So I'm hoping that works, but we're going to let it sit and let that latex dry, and then we'll come back to it. Once the canopies and window glass were completely masked, everything got sprayed with the Mr. Finishing Surfacer primer, the 1500 black primer, Now, I did also cover the insides of all the windows and canopies because we don't want overspray on any of the interior part. But the black will show through on the bottom side. And then what you see on there now is a mix of buff and flat flesh. All right, so I started with the buff and added light flesh, or flat flesh rather, to it to lighten it up a little bit to represent the window sealant that gets used. And some of these very, very thin strips of Tamiya tape, which I cut right here on this Infinity cutting mat, some of those strips cover about half of the masking that's already there. So you're only going to get about a half of the width of that will still be this visible sealant color. Other areas you'll see more, but in all the reference photos I was able to find, the sealant was very visible in some areas, somewhat visible in other areas, and almost not visible at all in some other areas. So some of these, like I said, are just barely covering what will eventually show. Other areas, they're completely covering what might still show in the end, and especially the backside of the canopies. These two areas were definitely visible. And then along the side rails of those, they were pretty well visible. But the front of the canopies, that one, they weren't as visible, as well as on the windshield area. So you can see I did the rearmost edge of the windscreen, and the lower edge of these side windows. And then the center window, I only did this bottom edge of it. So none of the sealant will be visible in this area here on either side. But that's fine. And then, of course, this center division piece between front and rear cockpits, you saw the note I put in there earlier, so I had to remask it. But I actually, once the black primer was done, I actually pulled off the masking and completely remasked it for this window sealant, so that it's going to be a little more visible. Because when I laid out that masking, well, technically the second time, I didn't account for leaving an area of that window sealant to be visible. So I had to do a little trickery work on there too. So that's actually the third complete masking on those windows. So now what it's ready for is our final top color on the aircraft, which, if I'm not mistaken, in the research that I looked at, I'll have to pull it up again, but it's going to be the gunship gray. So the cockpit surround, and you can see I've already sprayed some of the light ghost gray, but all around the canopy and then up to about this point of the nose radome, it's got the gunship gray there. This area obviously is the light ghost gray, and then more of the gunship gray to the back, and the vertical stabilizer keeps the light ghost gray. So these are masked ready for that paint. I am probably now going to mask for the paint on this, so that we can get that upper portion sprayed, and then we can do the rest of our fuselage upper portion. And I'm not 100% positive yet, but I think the outboard wingtips, the underside, is actually another color, haze gray. So we're going to have the light ghost gray, haze gray, and then the darker gunship gray on top. So that's where we're at this week. Hopefully here in another week, less than 2 weeks for sure, we should have this bird about wrapped up. And I've already started a little bit on the next project, which is going to be the AMT International Harvester Scout 2. We're going to do a 76 version of that, which my dad owned when I was younger. We didn't have it very long, so I have very vague memories of it, but I do remember it. So until the next time, y'all, peace and love.